Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. My name is Dalia Elgazar, and I will be your moderator today. We at Dalia Plus pride ourselves in partnering with forward-thinking technology and forward-thinking event organizers to give you lessons that you can learn from, ideas that you can steal from, and tips on how you can do a better job and a better experience for your event attendees, your sponsors, your exhibitors, everybody that is included within your event management, planning, marketing. So we are very lucky today to have two wonderful ladies, and we are going to be learning lessons about growing attendance with PPC and social media marketing for Money 2020, which is kind of awesome because we are going into 2020. So before we do that, we do have a couple of housekeeping notes for you. So 3 things, you do have homework. One is to definitely use the chat feature within the webinar. So you'll find it on the bottom of the screen where you are able to ask questions. You can ask questions at any time. So we are going to be definitely taking a look at them and fielding them to our speakers today. Second is to share. So share your ideas, share what has worked for you with your peers on this webinar as well. Also tweet out or share on social media any tips, any highlights, any ideas that you do want to steal from this webinar. Share it with your peers that are not on this webinar. This will be on demand, so you will have access to the recording afterwards. So be sure to be on the lookout for that. And at the end of the webinar, we will have a survey. So please take the time to fill out the survey and let us know what kind of content you would want us to produce or to share with you going forward. So before we get started, let's take a quick poll and find out who's in our audience. This is just for us to cater the content a little bit better in regards to who's joining us today. Just a couple clicks and you'll be good. Hope everybody has coffee or something stronger. Depends on where you are in the world. And the results. Are we able to share? Awesome. So we have organizers, agency, other, and we also had them do another poll question, which we will take a look at later, which is the overall growth KPI for attendee registrations. Very cool. So right now, as we said, the whole webinar is about growing attendance and attendee acquisition. We have with us Sabina, who's going to introduce herself later on, but one thing that keeps a lot of event organizers up at night is how do you grow your event? How do you reach new audiences? How is it trackable, as well as what kind of strategies or the mix of strategies that work really, really well, especially if you have international audiences as well within your show. So let's get started, and I'd like to welcome our 2 presenters, Sabina and Laura. Here they are, smiley, smiley, hello.
Hi.
Hi, everyone. How are you guys doing?
We're good.
Yeah, busy, busy. No, you never get rest when you're an event organizer.
No, you never do. Sabina, can you take a couple of minutes to introduce yourself for us?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Sabina Osorio, and I head up the marketing for Ascential's Money 2020 USA event. A little bit about Money 2020. It launched in 2012, and it's a really big payments, financial services, banking event that takes place in Las Vegas every year. So we just closed our 8th year in Vegas back in October, and it just feels like yesterday, you know, post-event blues. We're still doing a lot of the post-event analysis and reporting, and it was a really successful year for us. So happy to share more about that later on.
Perfect. Laura, how about you?
Hi. Yeah, my name is Laura, and I'm one of the directors at Tag Digital. So Tag Digital is a PPC agency. So we offer paid media and digital advertising exclusively to event organizers. So we run campaigns across search, social, display, and video for organizers who run big exhibitions, conferences, associations, awards, and typically our remit is to get more sponsors, more attendees, more visitors, and more data for our organizer clients.
Perfect. Well, talking about data, there was another poll question about overall growth KPI for attendee registration. Are we able to take a couple of minutes for the audience to take that poll, and then let's see the results real quick before we dive in? Just another click. All right, and what are the results? Because I know that KPIs are pretty huge for event organizers. Okay, so it seems the majority are between 20 and 40. Is that right? I think so. Awesome. Well, before we dive into it, I know Sabina is going to be talking about PPC as an attendee acquisition marketing tactic. Laura, can you explain PPC for us, please?
Yeah, sure. So PPC stands for pay per click advertising. So that's digital advertising on any channel. So it could be search ads on Google, it could be sponsored ads on Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn. And the idea is that you're creating a super targeted audience, showing them ads, and then that you as the advertiser pay for every click. So hence the name PPC. So those are the kind of ads that we run for clients like Sabina or for other organizers. And the idea is because you're paying for every single click, it absolutely has to count, because you could be paying $1 or $2 for every click. Not all of those clicks convert. So you want to make sure that the targeting is really good, the ad copy, the creative is really good, and that you're optimizing those to make sure that you're getting the most value for money.
Perfect. And Sabina, you had mentioned the growth of your events. I believe you have how many events? You have 4 events a year?
Right. So actually Money 2020 now has 3 global events. So we have the flagship event, which is in Las Vegas. And then back in 2016, we launched our Europe edition, which takes place now in Amsterdam. And in 2018, we kicked off our Singapore event, which is covering the whole Asia demographic. So yeah, 3 events globally. It grows year over year. It just, the delegates just keep coming, and it grows tremendously. So for us, it's a very successful event. We really try to, have content and thought leadership always at the core of what we do. The learnings and the networking are just such a crucial part of it. And increasingly, the networking is really much more of a priority for us in Vegas, and particularly because it is such a big event that we do a lot to make that big event feel small. And I think that's a key piece with our return attendees, is how do we keep them making sure that they're making the good connections that they pay a lot of money for, that they're getting the meetings that they're there for with the right people. So the connections and the meetings and the networking is just a big, big talking point for us in marketing. And Laura can confirm that we did a lot this year to push that, which did result in over 4,000 meetings, 4,000 one-to-one meetings just booked in the app, which is huge.
That's amazing. Amazing.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about the marketing tactics that you've used overall for the event, or has it changed from one event like one location to another?
Yeah, so I could speak to the Las Vegas event. So I've been with Money 2020 for about 4 years now. So this was my 4th event in Las Vegas that I ran the marketing for. And each year it has changed. We do a lot where we promote our speakers. Obviously the content is at the core of the event. So we promote a lot of big headline speakers that are speaking at the event. And like I said before, we do a lot with the networking elements. So with Laura, what I did a lot of this year is we created a lot of video content, and we ran that across various social platforms. And the piece that we had never really focused on before, because we just think, oh, we know our audience, we know our attendees, they're not on, they're not on Instagram, right? So that's the assumption we made. But actually we started running Instagram Insta story ads, which were new to me. And Laura was pushing us, like, we need to do more with that. And quite frankly, that was a big revenue generating opportunity for us, because we didn't realize that a lot of people are actually on Instagram and they follow us on Instagram, and the content that we created was tailored, for the Insta stories. And that, I think, was a new piece that we introduced this year heavily, that really showed great results for us. So again, I think it's about content creation. Like Laura said, we really have to keep the content engaging and fresh. And it does, take a toll on the creative team, but it pays off for sure.
So the marketing tactics sort of had to pivot a bit or change a bit with the recommendation from Laura, right, and the team.
Yeah, absolutely, because it goes from, just having images to having more video content, because that's become the new norm. That's become the new way that people consume their content across all platforms is video. So putting an emphasis on that has really made a big difference for us.
And how does email and telesales play a role within your mix as well, your marketing mix?
Oh, I mean, email is such a big part of what we do. We do a lot with our email campaigns. And as the brand, we're sort of quirky and cheeky with our email campaigns. If anyone's familiar, we put our speakers in, I don't know, spacecrafts and send them off to space. So we get very creative and we think outside of the box with everything that we do, especially with our email campaigns. We definitely have seen great results in terms of KPIs for our email performance, because we do keep things fresh and different, and each piece looks different than the last. So email marketing is huge. That, I would say, is the #1 driver of delegate registrations, followed by tag, for example, everything that they do. And then yes, telesales is another key piece. And for me, thinking that I'm a progressive marketer, telesales always sounds like what we're calling people, but quite frankly, that actually works as well, because when you think of it, we're in a B2B environment. So you've got assistants and PAs that are sort of handling things for their bosses. So they're the ones taking the call, fielding the call, and confirming that, yes, they will be attending. Let's set them up with the pass. So it's a lot of hand holding with that. We really try to target the audience that we associate telemarketing to. So we try to focus it on big groups, C-suite. So we pick that audience because we know that it's going to be high touch. They're going to need a lot of help and support. And that's who we focus telemarketing on.
Perfect. Laura, how do you go about determining and finding the prospect targets for Money 2020, for example? What made you pivot to Instagram, for example?
So we look at lots of different things. We know that the audience is going to need multiple touch points, and everybody's kind of digital exploration goes across search, it goes across retargeting, it goes across social. One of the big things really that we've been pushing, just as Sabina said, is video. And the main reason that we're pushing that is because it's underpriced media. So at the moment, if you want to bid on search keywords, for instance, like if we're thinking about Money 2020 and you look at, keywords along fintech, it's so expensive. So that price is going up every year, maybe 8 to 30%. Whereas if we can use video, we can attract a very kind of similar audience using maybe fintech interests, but not pay that same premium because everybody's bidding on those 4 slots basically on AdWords. So we're trying to find other ways to still attract a really good audience, bring them in, but not constantly pay that premium on search. And search is definitely still a big part of what we do, but it's just finding other ways to use that. So I think it's about having a good combination that everybody searches, for everything that they do, they search all the time. Then they're not going to convert for Money 2020, which is, a fairly premium event in one click. So we need to find multiple touch points. So we say, okay, they clicked on a search keyword, then we retarget them and we maybe show them a countdown ad to the end of an early bird pricing. And then we target them again on social, and then we get them to watch a video, and then we know after maybe 5 or 6 interactions they're going to go or they're not, basically, and we react to that. And then we look at things that are performing well. So we see, okay, Instagram stories are doing well. YouTube was another thing that did very well for Money 2020. And we'll put more money into that. And ultimately we're trying to achieve a cost per acquisition that is profitable for the brand, that we are happy with, and allows us to create volume, you know, at a price that works for everybody.
So Sabina, in regards to your engagement with TAG, you know, what are the benefits of engaging TAG versus taking it in-house? I mean, I know a lot of event organizers, they're like, I can do this on my own. We're going to bring in an intern and we're going to sit them in a cube and they can watch YouTube all day and figure it out. So,
you know, what's funny about that is when I first started at Money 2020, I was that, not intern, but I was the person, I was the marketing manager that came in and had to figure it all out on my own and
I have nothing against interns, by the way. I'm just saying that's usually what happens, though.
It makes sense. Yeah, no, I get it. And it's an easy thing to think that you can handle in-house, but to be completely honest, it's a big mistake because you will spend money very quickly. So we learned that, and you know what, we allocate a significant portion of our budget to TAG, so knowing that they're true professionals working that money and making sure that it's performing at, you know, the best that it can be, I think is very reassuring to us and to leadership as well. And you know, Laura and I have weekly calls where we go over all the campaigns, we freshen up the assets, you know, we are really synced up with everything that's happening, and that's freed up my time to be able to really focus on other things that move the needle for us, and making sure that, you know, the website looks great, that social media is great, because, you know, it's not just looking at social from a paid perspective, it's what are you doing on there organically so that you can keep growing that audience and have them engaged for when you do want to sell them a pass. It's just, you can't keep, you know, pushing buy my pass without giving people the right content that's going to engage them and get them, you know, warmed up to the idea of coming to the event. So yeah, I would definitely recommend going with an agency, no matter how big or small your budget is. I think it's definitely the way to go. Again, there's just so many things that I would have never known to do on my own by watching YouTube videos, like you said. You know, she has a whole team of professionals that are all over it, and I definitely can sleep better at night knowing that it's handled correctly.
Well, it's also a credible source that can give you ideas that you probably didn't think of. So I mean, Laura and her team probably push the envelope or push you out of your comfort zone quite a bit, but there's credibility and there's KPIs behind this is why we want to do it, right? So
yeah, and I think having TAG in particular being focused on events, I think that also helps us because they have a lot of experience with other events, not just Money 2020, and what's worked for other editions, for other events worldwide. So I think that insight is priceless. I think definitely going with an agency that has experience in the events world, because it's a very different beast. I think that nobody truly understands the price break cycle when you're trying to sell people on a pass before it goes up. And, you know, so I think that and the craziness of the event world, of how everything is, 10,000 miles a minute and you're just trying to get everything done. So I think that going with a partner that truly understands the event world, what you're up against, and that can bring priceless insights is definitely key.
And definitely someone who's not in the events industry and knows that you know, you have like a website launching, as you had mentioned, and there's a lot of crazy and fires to put out and everything like that. You do want to sleep better, so to speak, that, you know, there's people that are taking a look at your event and actually have interest, and that you're able to convert them, right? So.
Right, and it's also like an unbiased sort of perspective on it, right? Because Laura wants us to be successful and her team want us to succeed, but they're also looking at it from a different lens than we are, because we've drank our own Kool-Aid, you know, we think we're great, come, and she can bring that fresh perspective and saying, this is what you should be looking at.
Perfect. Laura, back to you. I wanted to ask you in regards to Money 2020, because as we said, it's in different locations, different countries. What's your strategy, or is there a secret to how you do the campaigns differently from one location to another? Or what do you usually take a look at?
Yeah, we've over the last 2 years, we've kind of aligned all of the the locations into one kind of global account, which has made a big difference because it means that we can use Asia, Europe, and the US in terms of how do we get them to work together as opposed to compete against each other, which is sometimes kind of what was happening before. And really the only winners in that were Google and Facebook because the price was getting driven up. So what we've done is we've looked at, okay, where are the kind of top locations, that countries that you're going to get people from, and then also we're going to know that there's people in the US, for instance, that have an interest in going to the Asia event. So we've looked at all the different keywords and said, okay, well, what's the intent? What's the trends that they're looking at in Asia? That, yeah, they might be based in the US, but let's not make that assumption that they definitely want to go to the US. So we did a whole lot of work on the keywords and locations and country targeting. And then the other thing that we're going to implement this year is a kind of always on campaign. So what that means is we look at Money 2020 as a global brand, and we can say, well, yeah, maybe they've not made their mind up yet about which event they want to go to, and we can educate people on the brand as a whole, and then people decide what they want to do. And the idea behind that is to build new data kind of for Money 2020 overall. In terms of channels, I'd say it's pretty similar across Asia and across the US and Europe in terms of it's Google, it's Bing, it's YouTube, Facebook and Instagram. It's quite similar across Asia, but we do also use Naver in South Korea, and next year we'll do more in China as well for 2020. But yeah, the channel mix is typically quite the same. We also translate for Asia and Europe events too.
How do you keep up with all the changes? Like, honestly, every time Instagram updates an app, like on my phone, I get overwhelmed and like, oh my goodness. So like, your team must be like really on it though.
I mean, we do our own internal learning sessions. So our team are constantly like trying to find stuff that their teammates don't know. So it's, you know, it's rewarding for them to figure out something someone
like
else doesn't know.
Peer learning, right?
Yeah, it's really important for us to do that. We have specialists in all different platforms and all different sectors. So we do that. But the other thing, and Sabina kind of touched on it as well, is all the new stuff that Google and Facebook and Microsoft and LinkedIn bring out, we have agency partnerships with all of them. And what they're doing is they're pushing us to use the new stuff. So they give us access to early betas, which we'll then give to clients like Sabina to say, oh, did you know that gallery ads have come out? Did you know that custom lists have come out? And none of her competitors have access to this stuff yet, but we can get that first. So it all sounds super friendly. Ultimately, Google and Facebook want us to spend more money with them, which is why they give us access to all this stuff and make it really easy. So it's giving an added benefit of working with an agency because we get kind of first access, and then it gives our clients a competitive edge, so they spend more money with the platforms, which is why these are the biggest companies in the world ultimately.
So these like internal learning, you know, the learning that you do with your client, with your employees, then with your clients, helps you pivot on the strategy and the media buy as well with your clients.
Yeah, for sure. So we look at, so when our team do learning sessions, they'll say, oh, there's this new feature come out from Google. I tested it. Here's the results. Here's the clients that it worked for. Here's what it didn't work for. And then we'll go into clients and we'll present to them. So we do lots of workshops to say, here's all the new stuff that's out, or have you thought about video advertising, or whatever the kind of topic of that quarter is. And then we get really good insights from our clients. So like Sabina said, because we only work in events, we hear things and we pick up things and we just absorb things about events. So whilst we get all of, I suppose, the technical learnings, we get all of the context from our clients. So between those two kind of ongoing learning opportunities, as well as all the influence from the platforms, we continue to kind of push the envelope to try and be first and be the best and push events. And we don't take on anything out with events. So we're very focused on that space, and we don't get distracted by, you know, any other sector. So yeah, I think all those things help us to make sure that we're doing the most relevant stuff for our clients.
So with the media buy strategy on the campaigns, how do you start out? Do you start out with like, is it a small investment, big investment? Does it depend on, you know, the type of event or the event portfolio?
Yeah, so I'd say it depends on the size of the target of your event. So, and also it depends, like say it's a new client, for instance, the smallest campaign we take on is like a $2,000 £1 spend. But what happened with Money 2020 going way back to Europe is they started out on a relatively small budget. But PPC is one of those things that you can prove the results from. So then the next year they say, well, do you know, say we doubled the budget, say we tripled the budget. Eventually that does get to a ceiling and you can't efficiently spend any more money. But the buy will increase year on year. So we're definitely in it for the long haul. And we know that year one, it's good to test and do a pilot, but year two, that budget will grow. The other thing with events that I think I've seen other agencies not quite get is the way that you need to spend the budget. So we know that even relatively expensive events like Money 2020, you're still going to get a huge influx of people in that last kind of 8 weeks, you know, and it's just the nature of the beast. Whereas I think sometimes clients panic that we're not spending enough early enough. But really, you're better just to keep holding it. Make sure we've got enough money for all of our price breaks, and you know, we ramp up if we've got a speaker list released, or you know, whatever the big events are throughout the year, throughout the campaign. But I think it's really important that you save the majority of your big buy for the end, because you know what's working at that stage. You've tested it, and we're going to get so many people coming in at that stage. Everyone, we'd love all of our end users to have more of a sense of urgency, but you know, I do it myself. There's events I know I'm going to, I've booked a flight, I'm definitely going, I've just not bought, I've not registered, I've not bought a ticket, you know, for whatever reason. And, you know, some of the Money 2020 audience aren't as motivated by discounts. You know, some of them are, and we get them in early, but there's others that, you know, they're going to pay the price at the end. So, yeah, I think keeping enough money for the end is super important in events, and not enough people do that, and it's quite basic.
So Sabina, with the increase in the investment with TAG and with PPC, since it's working so well for you and your events, do you have any challenges convincing the C-suite or the leadership for like, no pun intended, it's money, you know, that we are spending? Like, what are the challenges, and what kind of information do you share with them?
No, actually, like Laura said, it's so easy to be able to track it accurately that it kind of sells itself. It's the fact that we can say with confidence that they sold X amount of passes in this year. So we can sort of make the case effectively that we need more money to allocate to TAG. I guess the biggest challenge would be when you want to get a bit more granular. Sometimes tech isn't on our side when we want to see, okay, well, what percentage of that total, you know, say you sold 1,000 passes through TAG, how many of those were rebook clients? How many of those were startups? How many of those were, you know, completely new to the audience? So then those, when you get into the finer details, I think that's where it gets a bit more challenging, and I have some, you know, pushback on that regard. But because they'll say, we want to use TAG to get new business only. Well, that's not realistic. Like, they don't always know how social or how SEO works or how search works. So they don't know that you can't just target new people, you know? So it's that kind of back and forth where it's educating them on, well, we're running PPC ads. Like, anyone can see them and search for Money 2020 and they will get served this ad. So I think that's part of the challenge. But like Laura said, I think she hit the nail on the head when she talked about how we allocate the budget. I think that has changed year over year, because in the past we thought, let's front load it, let's get everything spent, you know, 3 months before the event, because we know that in the end it's just going to come in. But actually what works better is if we hold off on that budget until the tail end, until the last 8 weeks, when we really start to see the numbers come in. I mean, every event is different, but for Money 2020, that has sort of proven to be the key, is that we have to just make sure that we're allocating the budget in the right way. And her having the experience of working across other events, I think she saw that trend and was able to apply it to Money 2020. So I think that was key.
Well, so the trend of registration, for example, you know, historical, can play a role on like how the budget is allocated, I think, for
absolutely
PPC as well. Okay.
Yeah.
So the trackability of all of the data is very crucial and important, right? And so how does that go? Like, who from like your leadership team, or maybe from other parts of the organization, are like, I want to see that, so that they're able to tie in, you know, maybe PPC activity to other types of trends, so to speak?
Yeah, I mean, luckily at Ascential, we're part of a much bigger, organization. So we do have good resources like, that have really good experience with AdWords and Google Analytics that are able to sort of help, because Laura's team also has a lot of insight and knowledge on making sure that we're set up properly to tag things correctly, and making sure that we have those two teams linked up early on in the process. For example, today we're launching registration and we've been going back and forth. Yay, snaps for registration, come to Vegas
And a
2020.
new website. Whoop,
Yeah,
whoop, whoop.
yeah. So when you look at it that way, it's important that you get it set up out the gate correctly, because it's really hard to make those changes once you're already live, because you've already spent money, and it's hard to prove that, you got those registrations in through a specific channel. So I think making sure that I think that's the most important piece, actually, making sure that you test it, that you know that it's working correctly, and that you have subject matter experts on it. I have a very high level understanding of how it all works, but knowing that Laura has experts on her team, we have experts on our team that can validate what they're telling us, and making sure that they're not just making us drink their Kool-Aid is actually really important.
Cool. So I always hear, oh, PPC, this is where the little ads of the makeup that you try to look at on Google sort of follow you around, and it haunts you. Are they listening? Are they, they try to force you to either attend a show or buy something, etc. Do you ever receive feedback from your audience that they, these campaigns are following them? Are they annoyed? Are they not? Is it a nice reminder? What is it?
Actually, it's funny you say that, because when I first was saying in 2016, before we had Tag on, I was doing it all in-house. I was doing it all in-house, and I was using, I think it was Criteo. It was like a retargeting partner. And it wasn't necessarily clients that would come to us and say, oh, we see your ads everywhere. It was like staff. It was, people that I knew, friends that had just come to the website and be like, oh my God, I can't escape your ads. They're everywhere. And quite frankly, that was me spending money, in a dumb way. I hate to say that out loud, but we didn't need to be spending all that money with Criteo serving people retargeting ads that weren't even interested in coming to the event. So moving that budget over to Tag too, Laura, I think you can attest to this, you're nodding your head. That was a key turning point for us as well, as we were able to sort of really optimize that budget and not serve people ads that didn't need to be seeing them. I mean, you could speak more eloquently to how it all works, Laura, but I can just say that for a fact, that was a mistake early on.
Yeah, I think it's finding the balance of the right people seeing the ads enough times that it's not driving them insane. And sometimes it is feedback that we get. Sometimes we say, oh, senior management are seeing the ads too much, they're not seeing them enough. But what we would do is we would set a rule to say, okay, if someone's seen an ad 15 times and they've not interacted with it, let's take them out the loop. And if they come back to the website, we'll put them in. But yeah, we get that, people are listening to us, but actually what we're finding is lookalike audiences, which used to be, a little bit questionable on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube, are working so well. So we're essentially using predictive advertising as opposed to, just targeted ads. It's kind of, what do you actually need next based on, 5,000 data signals that have been built up about you as a user. So the ads are much more relevant, and you will pay much less on a lookalike audience now than you would have done, say, 2 years ago. So we use lots of data, lots of retargeting, and then we find lookalikes, or the platforms find lookalikes on that data as well. But yeah, the ads, it's finding the balance between not being too annoying and making sure that they see them.
Well, I think the creative plays a big role too. If
Yeah.
you're entertained and the content is relevant and it hits a nerve, no pun intended, with you, and comes in a time where you're like almost on the edge, do I go to 2020 or not? It served its purpose if it pushes you to register.
Yeah, I agree. And I think a big part of that is the creative sort of being fresh. And I harp on Laura about that a bit too much, because I'm like, I'm so sick of seeing these ads, like, let's freshen it up. And she says, well, actually, we're trying to optimize and make sure that we're testing the different creative sets and making sure that, we're serving the right one, and it needs time. So I feel that. I feel like definitely the creative is a key piece, which is why I love our creative team, and I will sing their praises all day, because they do really quirky stuff that I think of and they make it a reality. So I'm always happy to see fun new things put up.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm hoping we can get a couple of questions in before we have to end. I do actually have a question in front of me. The question is about the creative. So, for example, how creative is the creative depending on the generations that you have coming to the show? Because I know that it's important, as well as, you know, younger people. I mean, I attest to some of my I attest to my daughters, as well as to, you know, college students that are trying to get into some of these like career oriented events, for example. What kind of content will resonate more with them? Is it the duration? Is it the, like, is it video versus not? What kind of creativity can you bring to them in order to have them convert?
I'll start off, Laura, and then you could comment. But I would say that it's important to sort of be true to your brand, and keep that always at the, you know, forefront of everything that you do. So when Money 2020 launched, like there was no other event in the industry making caricatures for their speakers. We sort of kicked that off. So I think with that gave us a lot of creative liberty to sort of do funny things with them, and, you know, have puns and get creative. So I think that has always been a part of our brand identity, is the caricatures. So I think find your niche, find what works for you and what you believe in and what you is unique to you and your brand. I would say that. And then the other piece is, I think, know your channels and what is going to work best across. For example, what works well on LinkedIn doesn't really do well on Instagram or even on Facebook. So I think it's really create content specifically for the channel and be true to your brand. So for us, for example, on LinkedIn, what does really well is video content focused on speakers doing testimonials or doing backstage interviews, for example. That doesn't work as well on Instagram. The Insta stories, I think it's more about like snippets of content, quick and dirty little bits and pieces that we can put together. So again, I think it's stay true to your brand. I think push the envelope too. I mean, we're always doing quirky things and sort of getting sort of leadership on our case, like, oh, that's too much, that's too racy. But, you know, I think if you're not pushing it, people aren't talking about you. So
That's true.
Yeah.
Very true.
I think that's true. The other thing I'd add to that, Sabina, that I think you guys did really well is you had lots of different creative for the specific groups that we were trying to target. So we had stuff for startups, and we had stuff for women in finance, and we had all of the speakers with the caricatures. So I think having that kind of creative that's actually aimed at a very specific audience, then we can build out an audience with the right creative that talks to them, that's going to perform better than something just generic, you know, across everything. So I think taking the time, and you're right, is so much work for the creative team, but taking the time to do that reduces cost per acquisition, means more targeted advertising. So I think it's worth thinking about all of the different personas and then building out creative for each of those as well.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So another question that we have is, if someone wants to get started with PPC, hasn't done it before, how and where do they start?
So obviously we can help anybody that wants to start, and we kind of guide them through that process, but it's definitely something that you can do yourself. I would just say with that, you want to be careful, because Google and Facebook make it so easy, as Sabina said, to spend money, but to spend money and get a return on investment is much, much harder. So if you are thinking about running it yourself, make sure that you spend the time going through the AdWords Academy, going through Facebook Blueprint, go through Google Digital Garage, learn as much as you can and test with very small budgets before you go and commit like a $10,000 budget, you know, which is maybe all of your digital advertising spend. So yeah, that's kind of, there's two options. You do it yourself, but definitely do your research, or do it with an agency. And to do it with us, you need a $2,000 minimum spend to start with.
Very cool. So any words of advice, ladies, before we wrap it up?
I mean, I would just say that, I don't know, I will harp on this. I think the biggest mistake I made was trying to do it all on my own. Definitely get help. Even just jumping on a call with Laura and the team, like, you just learn a lot. So I think that in and of itself, at least have a call, at least do yourself a favor and have a call, because you will learn something even from just talking to her about what you're thinking of doing. And definitely try it, because there's, honestly, we wouldn't be able to have grown the event to the size that it is now without support from an agency like TAG, doing very optimized PPC campaigns for us. So I think it's very important to be able to scale the event, and it should not be ignored.
Perfect. That's an amazing endorsement.
Thanks. So yeah, I would definitely say start small. I think if you're new to PPC, you've not done it before, start small, test, learn what works, and then start spending on top of that. It's very, very easy to spend a lot of money with no returns. So I think just take your time. And yeah, we have lots of material on our website as well, blogs and specifically PPC for events. So take the time, read all that. And as Sabina says, we're more than happy to have a chat. Absolutely zero pressure to do any work with us.
Perfect. Well, thank you, ladies, and happy holidays. And Sabina, all the best to you for registration, for website, go yourself Vegas and Champagne and everything. So
yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, event planners' work is never done. So I'm glad you have Laura and the team on your side. Now you have me on your side. I'm going to be
good.
All right.
Thanks,
so, yeah, thank you. And then for everybody that joined us, thank you so much for joining us. And if you have any last minute questions, or if you want to reach Laura, we will share her contact information as well for her and her team. There will be a survey visible to you shortly, so please it takes 3 minutes. Actually, it takes 2.5. But please take the survey. Let us know what else you want to learn more about, even if it's like about the creative for PPC ads, all of that good stuff. And happy holidays to all, and have a great, great day.
You too. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.